all about Pearl Harbor. I'm sure you've heard of the day December 7th, 1941, but how much do you really know? I hope to inform you about one of America's biggest tragedies. I found this topic very interesting, so I decided to share that knowledge. The circumstances before, during, and after the attack on Pearl Harbor all played a major role in the United States' outlook on life. Before the attack, the United States and Japan was not on good terms, and Japan wanted more control and more power. The Great Depression in the 1930s really put a damper on Japan's economy, so to fix this, they decided to invade Manchuria. But the League of Nations frowned upon invasion, so Japan decided to exit the League of Nations and invade Manchuria anyways. History.com tells us that later on there was a war in Nanjing, China, which was the capital of the Chinese Nationalist Party. This was 6 weeks of killings and rapes, and it was also known as the infamous Nanjing Massacre. Japan and the United States were not good for about 10 years prior to the attack on the U.S. The United States decided to pass economic sanctions against Japan, and History.com tells us that this was trade embargoes on exports, oil, and metals and scraps. The U.S. decided to economically support Guillemending just because this was also known as Nanjing and they were under attack of Japan. There was also no progress between Washington and Tokyo, so the inevitable attack on Pearl Harbor was bound to happen. Japan knew the only way to gain power was to go to war, but for their attack to be successful, they needed to use the element of surprise. During the attack, Japan used the element of surprise to try to overpower the United States and take control of the Pacific. Pearl Harbor became the United States fleet base in 1940. If you destroy Pearl Harbor, that means you have control of the Pacific. Admiral Yamamoto had plenty of months to prepare, so he decided he was going to use multiple waves of planes. Hawaii was about 4,000 miles away from Japan, so the U.S. was not expecting any kind of attack, but ready or not, Japan was on the way. Britannica.com gives us a clear timeline on what happened on that day, December 7th, 1941. On this day at 6:10 a.m., the first wave of planes launched from Japan. At 6:45, the USS Ward spotted, fired, and sunk a Japanese submarine. It only took 8 minutes. At 7:02, a radar spotted an unidentified aircraft that was Japan. But radars were fairly new, so the lieutenant who was over the radar said it was a false alarm or just U.S. planes coming in from California. Because he decided it was a false alarm, at 7:40, the first wave of planes reached Hawaii. Only 9 minutes later were the attack orders given from the aerial Japanese commanders. At 8:10 a.m., the USS Arizona exploded, and 7 minutes later, a Japan submarine was fired upon and sunk at the entrance of Pearl Harbor. At 8:54, the second wave of planes attacked, and at 9:30, the USS Shaw exploded, and by 10 a.m., Japan had retreated. The first wave of planes came in from the western side, and they focused on attacking airfields and anti-air defenses. The second wave attacked from the eastern side, and they met in the middle. Though Japan had plenty of time and resources to prepare a successful attack, they still managed to fail the heart of the mission. With 67 ships launching dive bombers, torpedoes, and fighter planes, Japan still missed all the major targets. They were supposed to destroy oil sites, ammunition containers, and repair facilities. Britannica.com shows us that Japan lost only 29 of their 353 aircrafts, but only one of their ships survived the entire Pearl Harbor attack. History.com shows us that 8 United States battleships were all hit, but 4 were sunk completely and 4 were only damaged. But not one U.S. aircraft carrier was present during the Pearl Harbor attack, and later that will haunt Japan during the Battle of Midday. 2,404 military personnel and civilians died during the attack, and 1,000 only on the USS Arizona alone also died. 64 Japanese died during the Pearl Harbor attack. Though it was very disastrous, it could have been a lot worse, and the U.S. could have lost everything of importance. Though we were not prepared, we learned from our mistakes. An admiral and a lieutenant were relieved of their duties because they were not prepared for this attack. But 15 Medals of Honors and 51 Navy Crosses were given out for the bravery and courageous actions of our soldiers. Patriotism swept across the United States, and we had double in the military, and we entered a wartime economy. So it says pearlharbor.org. So the taxes went up to support the war, and we bought bonds, and everybody pitched in to help clean up. We declared war on Japan after dropping 2 atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and immediately 100,000 Japanese were killed. The events leading up to the attack, the actual attack, and the aftermath of the attack all played a role in the story of Pearl Harbor and the way the Americans responded. After such a tragedy, we were better prepared. Though we're better prepared, we did learn from our mistakes, and we entered World War II after dropping 2 atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The U.S. learned from our mistakes, and now we're more patriotic for our country. December 7th, 1941 will always be a day to remember, but do not forget why it happened and how it ended.